Dr. Elena Vasquez wiped sweat from her brow as she macheted through another tangle of vines. 3 weeks into her botanical research expedition in the Amazon, and she'd already catalogued 17 previously undocumented plant species. But nothing had prepared her for what lay ahead. Dr. Vasquez. You need to see this. Paulo, her local guide, rarely sounded alarmed. Elena quickened her pace, following his voice through the dense foliage. She emerged into a small clearing where something had crashed through the canopy. Smoking debris was scattered across the rainforest floor, but at the center sat an object that defied explanation, a hexagonal container roughly the size of a small car, its metallic surface unmarred despite the apparent impact. What is it? Paulo whispered, keeping his distance. Elena approached cautiously, her scientific curiosity overriding caution. I'm not sure. It's not from any space program I recognize. The container hummed with a subtle vibration. No markings, no seams, just a smooth silver-blue surface that seemed to ripple like liquid despite being solid to the touch. Elena circled it twice before noticing a section that appeared slightly different in texture. When her fingers brushed against it, the panel dissolved, revealing a translucent chamber inside. Elena gasped. Curled in a fetal position was a small humanoid figure. At first glance, it resembled a child of perhaps 8 or 9 years, but the similarities ended there. Its skin was a pale lavender color with a fine pattern of scales that caught the light. 6 fingers on each hand. No visible ears, just subtle indentations where they should be. Most striking were the large, almond-shaped eyes, closed in what appeared to be sleep or unconsciousness. Dios mío, Elena whispered. Paulo, get Professor Okafor on the satellite phone. Now. Within hours, the clearing was crawling with Elena's research team and security personnel from the university. Professor Okafor, her department head, had insisted on complete secrecy until they understood what they were dealing with. The chamber appears to be some sort of stasis pod, Dr. Hiroshi Tanaka, the team's medical expert, explained as they ran portable scanners over the container. The being inside is alive but in a suspended state. These readings suggest a metabolism unlike anything I've seen before. What do we do? Asked Okafor, his usual confidence shaken. Contact the authorities? Elena thought of the military protocols that would instantly be enacted. The creature, the child, would become a specimen, dissected and studied without compassion. No, she said firmly. Not yet. This is a sentient being. Look at the cranial development, the opposable thumbs. This is no animal. We need to approach this as first contact, not a specimen collection. Okafor frowned. That's not our call to make, Elena. Give me 48 hours, she pleaded. Let me bring it back to the lab. If we can revive it safely, maybe we can communicate. This could be the most important scientific discovery in human history, but how we handle it matters. Against his better judgment, Okafor agreed. The container was carefully loaded onto their transport and flown back to Elena's research facility in California. The university president was informed but agreed to maintain secrecy until they had more information. In her lab, Elena worked tirelessly to understand the stasis chamber's operation. On the 3rd day, she discovered a sequence of touch points that, when pressed in the correct order, initiated a deactivation sequence. The chamber's transparency increased, and the fluid inside began to drain. The small figure's chest rose and fell more prominently, its breathing becoming visible. Then, as Elena and her small team watched in breathless anticipation, the large eyes fluttered open, revealing irises of brilliant gold with vertical pupils like a cat's. The being looked directly at Elena, and a small 6-fingered hand pressed against the chamber wall. In that moment, Elena knew her life had changed forever. Whatever consequences came from her decision to bring this child to her lab, she would face them. Because in those alien eyes, she saw something unmistakably familiar, intelligence, fear, and hope. The alien child shivered as the last of the stasis fluid drained away. Elena quickly wrapped a thermal blanket around the small, lavender-skinned figure as Dr. Tanaka monitored vital signs on his equipment. The being's golden eyes darted nervously around the lab, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. Heart rate elevated but stable, Tanaka reported. Body temperature approximately 32 degrees Celsius, cooler than human norm but consistent with the readings we've been getting. Respiratory function appears adequate in Earth's atmosphere. Elena knelt to eye level with the child. "Hello," she said softly. "My name is Elena." She touched her chest, then gestured toward the alien. "Do you have a name?" The child tilted its head, the motion oddly bird-like. From its throat came a series of melodic clicks and whistles that no human vocal cord could produce. "We need a linguist," Elena announced, never breaking eye contact with their visitor. "Call Dr. Marcus Wilson at Berkeley. If anyone can help us bridge this communication gap, it's him." Dr. Wilson arrived 12 hours later, his eyes widening at the sight of the alien child who now sat cross-legged on an examination table, carefully studying a simple puzzle box Tanaka had offered. "Remarkable," Marcus whispered. "The cranial structure suggests highly developed language centers. Have you tried visual communication methods?" Elena nodded. "Basic pictograms." The response has been interesting. She showed Marcus a tablet where they had displayed simple images, a human figure, water, food. The alien had studied each, then used its six-fingered hand to trace modifications to the images, adding strange symbols alongside them. "It's trying to teach us," Marcus realized. This could be its written language. Over the next week, they worked around the clock. Marcus brought in specialized language acquisition software designed for cross-cultural communication. The child proved to be remarkably intelligent, quickly grasping the pattern-matching exercises. By day 3, they established that the melodic sounds were indeed language, not merely vocalizations. "The phonology is complex," Marcus explained during their daily briefing. "Multiple tones overlapping simultaneously, something like playing 3 notes on a piano at once to form a single phoneme. But we're making progress." On day 5, the breakthrough came. The alien pointed to itself and made a specific sequence of sounds. "Kira," Elena repeated, approximating the central tone but missing the harmonics. "Is that your name?" The child, Kira, nodded, a gesture they had not taught her. She had been observing them. That evening, using a combination of pictograms, simple words, and gestures, Kira revealed the first pieces of her story. She was not a child but young by her species standards. Her people had been studying Earth for decades. The container they found her in wasn't a spacecraft but a biological specimen container, a cage. "She was collected," Elena said, her voice tight with anger as she translated Kira's communication for the team. "Like we might collect an interesting insect species. She says there were others, different species, in other containers." "Who did this to her?" Professor Okafor demanded. Through painstaking communication, they learned that Kira's captors were not her own people but another spacefaring species, collectors of biological curiosities from across the galaxy. She had been in the specimen container for what they estimated was 3 Earth years, kept in stasis except when being studied or displayed. The crash wasn't an accident, Marcus interpreted from Kira's elaborate series of gestures and newly learned words. The collectors abandoned their specimens when they detected Earth's satellite surveillance. They jettisoned the specimens they considered less valuable before making their escape. Elena felt her heart breaking as Kira demonstrated how she had been displayed, posed and immobilized while being observed. Yet despite this trauma, the young alien showed remarkable resilience and curiosity about her human rescuers. On day 8, Kira touched the tablet and, using the rudimentary language program, constructed her first complete sentence in English approximation, "Elena friend Kira." The lab fell silent. Then Elena knelt beside the examination table and gently took Kira's six-fingered hand in her own. "Yes," she said, blinking back tears. "Elena, friend Kira." That night, Professor Okafor approached Elena in her office. "The university president is getting nervous. Government officials have been asking questions about our unusual supply requisitions. We can't keep this secret much longer." "We can't turn her over," Elena insisted. "You've seen how intelligent she is, how she's been traumatized. She's not a specimen to be studied, she's a person. A non-human person with no legal standing," Okafor countered. "The moment the government finds out, they'll take her." Elena looked through the observation window where Kira sat with Marcus, rapidly absorbing new vocabulary. "Then we need to make sure that when they do find out, Kira has advocates. We need to prove she's sentient, intelligent, and deserving of rights." "How?" "By letting her tell her own story," Elena said. "Give me 2 more weeks. By then, her English will be good enough that no one can deny her personhood." Okafor sighed heavily. 2 weeks, Elena. Not a day more. After that, we go public, on our terms. As he left, Elena watched Kira point to the stars visible through the lab's skylight, making a series of sounds that Marcus carefully recorded. She was naming constellations, but from a perspective no human had ever seen. The transformation in Kira over the next 2 weeks was nothing short of remarkable. Her grasp of English grew exponentially, aided by her species' apparent gift for language acquisition. Though her pronunciation remained musical and accented with harmonics humans couldn't replicate, her vocabulary expanded to over 2,000 words. Dr. Marcus Wilson had moved a cot into his office, working tirelessly to document what he called the linguistic event of the millennium. He'd created a specialized computer interface that allowed Kira to communicate more complex thoughts when spoken language failed her. "Her cognitive mapping is fascinating," he explained to Elena one evening as they watched Kira sleep in the comfortable enclosure they'd built to mimic her preferred environmental conditions, slightly cooler and more humid than human comfort levels. "She thinks in patterns and relationships rather than linear sequences. It's why she excels at mathematics but struggles with human narratives." Elena nodded, watching the gentle rise and fall of Kira's chest. "Has she shared more about her home?" "Bits and pieces. Her world orbits a binary star system. Their civilization is ancient, possibly millions of years old. They evolved from amphibious ancestors, which explains her affinity for water and the vestigial gill structures beneath her jaw." Elena sighed, running a hand through her disheveled hair. "Tomorrow we go public. I'm terrified, Marcus. We've prepared as much as we can. The university lawyers have filed preliminary briefs arguing for her protected status. The video interviews demonstrate her intelligence clearly. Will it be enough?" Elena whispered. Morning came too quickly. As planned, Professor Okafor had arranged a small, controlled press conference with select scientific journalists and 2 government representatives. Before it began, Elena went to check on Kira. She found the alien child sitting cross-legged on her sleeping mat, golden eyes fixed on the tablet where she had been learning about Earth's various cultures. "Elena," Kira said, her voice creating harmonics that seemed to vibrate the air. "I learned about zoos today." Elena felt a chill. "Yes, what about them?" "Humans keep animals in enclosures. For study. For viewing." Kira's 6 fingers tapped nervously against her knee. "Like collectors kept Kira." Elena sat beside her. "Some zoos, yes. But the best ones protect endangered species and help them thrive. And we recognize more and more that intelligent animals deserve better treatment. Am I endangered species to protect? Or specimen to study?" The direct question carried no accusation, merely a simple curiosity that made it all the more devastating. You are a person, Elena said firmly. Different from humans, yes, but a person with rights. That's what we're fighting for. Kira was silent for a long moment, her vertical pupils dilating slightly. The others like me. In other containers. Do you think they survived too? It was a question Elena had avoided contemplating. I don't know. If they did, we'll try to find them. The collectors will return, Kira said with unsettling certainty. They always return for valuable specimens. Before Elena could respond, Dr. Tanaka entered the room. They're ready for us. The press conference proceeded better than Elena had dared hope. Kira, dressed in specially designed clothing that accommodated her slightly different physiology, answered questions with a thoughtfulness that impressed even the skeptical government officials. She explained her understanding of mathematics, demonstrated knowledge of her star system that aligned with astronomical data, and gently corrected misconceptions about interstellar travel. No, faster than light is not possible as you understand physics, she explained to one reporter. Collectors use spacefold technology. Different concept entirely. When asked about her captivity, Kira grew noticeably subdued. 3 cycles in container. Awake only for study and display. Collectors not cruel by their understanding. Just indifferent. Her golden eyes scanned the room. Humans could be same. Or different. I hope different. The government representatives requested a private meeting following the press conference. Elena, Marcus, Okafor, and the university's lead counsel accompanied Kira to the small conference room. This situation presents unprecedented challenges, began Dr. Abernathy, the senior official from a department whose name they avoided specifying. The existence of extraterrestrial intelligent life has global implications. Kira's existence, Elena corrected gently. She's not a concept, she's an individual. Abernathy nodded stiffly. Indeed. Which is why we're proposing a research program at our specialized facility in Nevada. State-of-the-art equipment, controlled environment, full security detail to protect against any external threats. You mean Area 51, Marcus said bluntly. That designation is fictional, Dr. Wilson, Abernathy replied without humor. Our concern is both scientific advancement and national security. Kira, who had remained silent, suddenly spoke. I have learned about your history. Japanese internment camps. Indigenous boarding schools. Tuskegee experiments. She looked directly at Abernathy. Containment for protection becomes containment for control. The room fell silent. Abernathy's colleague, a younger woman who had introduced herself only as Agent Reeves, leaned forward. Those were different circumstances, she said softly. Different times. All circumstances unique. All times different. Question is whether humans see Kira as person or asset. Kira's harmonics shifted to a minor key that sounded distinctly sad. I escaped one cage. I do not wish for another. Elena placed her hand on Kira's shoulder. What Kira needs is normalization, not isolation. She's been traumatized by captivity. Putting her in another facility, no matter how well-intentioned, would only worsen that trauma. What do you propose instead, Dr. Vasquez? Abernathy asked. Supervised integration. Let her remain with our research team, with appropriate security provided by your department. She continues learning about our world while we learn from her. Transparent research, shared with the global scientific community. Abernathy and Reeves exchanged glances. We'll need to consult with our superiors, Abernathy said finally. In the meantime, maintain current protocols. No additional media exposure. After they left, Elena finally exhaled. That went better than expected. They will take me, Kira said simply. Unless we prevent. Professor Okafor shook his head. We can't prevent the United States government from doing anything they set their mind to, Kira. Then we must change their mind. Kira turned to Elena. I need to see more of Earth. Beyond walls and screens. I need humans to see me. Many humans. Not as specimen. As person. Elena felt a flutter of fear and hope. That's risky, Kira. Life is risk, Kira replied, using an idiom she'd recently learned. Trust requires vulnerability. I trust Elena. Does Elena trust Kira? In that moment, looking into those alien yet expressive golden eyes, Elena made her decision. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Yes, she said. I trust you, Kira. Elena's SUV crept along the coastal highway as dawn broke over the Pacific. In the passenger seat, Kira pressed her six-fingered hand against the window, transfixed by the ocean waves crashing against the shore. Her lavender skin seemed to shimmer in the early morning light. Water, she whispered, the word carrying harmonic undertones. So much water. Like home, but different color. Our oceans are amber. Elena glanced nervously in the rearview mirror. No sign of pursuit yet. They had slipped away from the research facility at 3 a.m., leaving behind only a note for Marcus explaining their impromptu field trip. She knew the risk she was taking, her career, possibly even her freedom, but after yesterday's meeting with the government officials, Elena couldn't shake the certainty that Kira would disappear into some classified facility if she didn't act. We'll reach my beach house in about an hour, Elena explained. It's isolated. Private. You can see the ocean up close. Kira tilted her head in that bird-like gesture that had become endearingly familiar. Not hiding. Meeting others, yes? As we planned? Elena tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Yes, but carefully. Jordan is trustworthy, he's a journalist who specializes in scientific ethics. If anyone can help shape public opinion about you, it's him. And the doctor? Dr. Patel is an old friend from medical school. She'll examine you independently from Dr. Tanaka's work. The more medical professionals who can verify your sentience and unique physiology, the stronger our case becomes. They arrived at the modest beach house as the sun climbed higher in the sky. Kira stepped from the vehicle cautiously, her movements still carrying that slight otherworldly grace. When her feet touched the sand, she froze, then wiggled her toes experimentally. Texture pleasant, she announced with something close to delight. Then her golden eyes fixed on the ocean, and without warning, she sprinted toward the water. Kira, wait. Elena called, but it was too late. The young alien had reached the shoreline and plunged directly into an incoming wave. Elena ran after her in panic, scanning the water. Had she miscalculated? Were Kira's respiratory systems not adapted for Earth's oceans? But before she could wade in, Kira surfaced several meters out, her lavender face split in what was unmistakably a smile. Water carries salt like home, she called, her voice carrying clearly over the waves. Buoyancy different but pleasant. For the next hour, Elena watched as Kira swam with astonishing efficiency, her body seemingly designed for aquatic movement. The concerns that had weighed on her shoulders since the press conference momentarily lifted. In this moment, Kira wasn't a scientific marvel or an alien refugee, she was simply a young being experiencing joy. By midday, Jordan Chen and Dr. Ananya Patel had arrived. Elena had known both for years, but their expressions upon seeing Kira, now wrapped in a large beach towel on the deck, her scales catching sunlight, were priceless. My God, Jordan whispered, notebook forgotten in his hand. She's beautiful. Dr. Patel recovered her professional composure more quickly, extending her hand to Kira. Hello, I'm Dr. Patel. It's an honor to meet you. Kira performed the small head bow she had adopted as her greeting. Honor returned, Doctor. Your specialty is neurology, Elena explained. You wish to scan my brain? With your permission, yes. I've brought portable equipment. Jordan cleared his throat. And I'd like to interview you, Kira. Your story deserves to be told accurately, not as a sensational tabloid headline but as the profound first contact it represents. The afternoon passed in a whirlwind of activity. Dr. Patel conducted her examinations with respectful efficiency, marveling at Kira's unique neural structures. Jordan's interview was thorough yet sensitive, focusing not only on Kira's experiences as a captive specimen but on her culture, her understanding of the universe, and her hopes for her future on Earth. What do you miss most about your home? Jordan asked as the sun began to set. Kira was silent for a long moment. The singing forests, she finally said. Trees that communicate through tones we can hear. Each forest has unique harmony. Elena watched as Jordan scribbled furiously, knowing that such poetic descriptions would help humanize Kira to his readers. Their peaceful interlude shattered with the sound of helicopter rotors approaching. Elena rushed to the window to see two black SUVs pulling up the beach house's driveway, followed by the landing of a helicopter in the open area beyond. They found us, she said, her heart sinking. Dr. Patel quickly gathered her equipment. I've got everything I need. The neural scans clearly indicate complex cognition equivalent to or beyond human capability. Jordan held up his phone. And I've already filed the first part of my story with 3 major outlets. It'll hit the wires in 30 minutes with follow-ups throughout the week. The front door opened before Elena could respond. Agent Reeves entered, followed by 4 men in tactical gear. Dr. Vasquez, Reeves said, her tone more resigned than angry, you've put us in an extremely difficult position. You put us in an impossible one, Elena countered. You were going to disappear Kira into some government black site. That was never the intention, Reeves replied, though her eyes flickered away momentarily. But this unauthorized field trip has forced our hand. Kira stepped forward, her posture straight and dignified. I requested to see Ocean. To meet more humans. Elena helped because I asked. Blame belongs to me. That's not how our laws work, Reeves said, but her expression softened slightly as she addressed Kira directly. Your law's inadequate for situation, Kira responded calmly. Need new thinking. Abernathy entered then, looking harried. The president has been briefed on the situation. There's about to be a global media firestorm when these stories break. He glared at Jordan, who met his gaze unflinchingly. Which is why we have a new proposal, Reeves interjected. Direct from the highest levels. The terms they outlined were surprising. Kira would remain under Dr. Vasquez's primary care, but in a special joint university government program. A dedicated facility would be established, not in Nevada, but at the university, with Kira classified as an autonomous non-human person with provisional protected status. Why the change of heart? Elena asked suspiciously. Political reality, Abernathy admitted. Once the public sees her as a person, which your journalist friend here has ensured, disappearing her becomes politically untenable. Better to control the narrative through cooperation than fight a losing battle. Kira looked to Elena. This acceptable compromise? Elena considered carefully. We would need guarantees. Written policies. International oversight. Transparency. All negotiable, Reeves said. Within reason. As the sun sank into the Pacific, casting gold and purple across the water, colors that reminded Elena of Kira's eyes and skin, they began hammering out the details of what would become known as the First Contact Protocols. Later that night, after the officials had departed with promises to return in the morning, Kira stood at the edge of the deck, looking up at the stars. Can you see your home from here? Elena asked, joining her. Not visible to naked eye, Kira replied. But I know direction. She pointed to a section of sky. There. Always there, even when cannot see. Do you want to go back? Elena asked, the question she'd been afraid to voice since they'd found Kira. Complicated question, Kira said softly. Miss Home, yes. But collectors still danger there. And here. She turned to Elena, her expression earnest, here I have found freedom. Different kind than before. New kind. Elena felt her throat tighten with emotion. Whatever happens next, we'll face it together. Together, Kira echoed, the word carrying harmonics that seemed to linger in the night air like a promise. 6 months had passed since the Pacific Revelation, as the media had dubbed Kira's public introduction to humanity. The world had changed in ways both profound and surprisingly mundane. Religious institutions debated the theological implications of extraterrestrial intelligence while late-night comedians joked about Earth's immigration policies. Scientists across disciplines made pilgrimages to the newly established Interspecies Communication Center where Kira now lived and worked alongside Elena. The center occupied a renovated building on the university campus, modified to include both human and Kira-friendly environments. Its architecture was deliberately transparent, glass walls and open spaces that allowed the public to observe much of the research being conducted, countering fears of government secrecy. Elena scrolled through the day's schedule on her tablet as she sipped her morning coffee. Kira had 3 public education sessions, a meeting with the United Nations delegation, and an afternoon devoted to the Communication Array project. The latter had been Kira's most passionate focus, an attempt to establish contact with her homeworld using Earth's deep space communication network. Dr. Vasquez? The center's security chief, Commander Rivera, appeared at her office door. We've detected an unusual signal pattern from the SETI array in New Mexico. The astronomy team thinks you should see this immediately. Elena's heart raced as she followed Rivera to the communication hub where Dr. Whitaker, their lead astronomer, was hunched over a display terminal. It's definitely artificial and coming from the direction Kira indicated as her home system, Whitaker explained, pointing to a waveform on the screen. The pattern matches some of the harmonics in Kira's language. Have you told her? We wanted your approval first. If this is what we think it is. Elena took a deep breath. Get her. 10 minutes later, Kira stood silently before the display, her golden eyes unblinking as she absorbed the incoming signal. In the months since her emergence from the specimen container, she had grown several inches, her lavender scales developing subtle iridescent patterns that Dr. Tanaka theorized indicated her progression toward adolescence. It is my people, she finally said, her voice vibrating with emotion. A search vessel. They received our transmission. The room burst into excitement until Kira raised her 6-fingered hand. There is more, she continued. They report collectors have returned to my world. Conflict has begun. My people resist, but technology disadvantage is significant. Elena felt a chill. Are they asking for help? Not directly. They respond to our message of my safety. They. Kira hesitated, searching for the right words. They celebrate my freedom but warn of continued danger. Collectors now know my location. The implications cascaded through Elena's mind. Earth had barely begun to process the reality of one peaceful alien visitor. The possibility of hostile collectors arriving in search of their lost specimen threatened to upend the delicate global acceptance Kira had fostered. Within hours, an emergency meeting convened with government officials, military leaders, and the center's scientific team. The conference room hummed with tension as satellite data confirmed unusual activity in Earth's outer solar system. We've detected gravitational anomalies consistent with Kira's description of spacefold technology, Admiral Ortiz reported grimly. Best estimate puts them at Jupiter's orbit, but approaching rapidly. How long? Asked Secretary Westfield, the President's appointed liaison for extraterrestrial affairs. 3 days, maybe 4. All eyes turned to Kira, who sat with perfect stillness at the center of the human chaos. What do they want? Secretary Westfield asked directly. To reclaim valuable specimens, Kira answered simply. Me. Possibly others if Earth biology interests them. Collectors do not recognize sentience in other species easily. To them, all are potential specimens. Can we negotiate? Elena asked. Possibly. They understand exchange of resources. But promises mean little to them. Admiral Ortiz leaned forward. What about defense? Can they be stopped militarily? Kira's vertical pupils contracted slightly. Your technology is insufficient. They would see resistance as interesting behavior from specimens, nothing more. As the meeting dissolved into arguments about planetary defense and diplomatic options, Elena noticed Kira slip quietly from the room. She followed, finding the young alien on the center's rooftop garden, a space designed to mimic aspects of her homeworld with its amber-tinted pools and specialized vegetation. Kira stood gazing at the sky, her posture conveying a weariness Elena had never seen before. I have brought danger to Earth, she said without turning. The very danger I warned of. Elena moved beside her. This isn't your fault, Kira. Choice remains as before. Containment or freedom. But scale has changed. Her harmonics shifted to a register Elena had learned indicated deep distress. My people offer third option. They will attempt intercept of collector vessel. If I can reach rendezvous coordinates beyond your moon. Elena felt her stomach drop. They want you to leave Earth. To protect Earth. And to help my people fight collectors with knowledge I have gained of their methods. Kira finally turned, her golden eyes meeting Elena's. Rescue mission is dangerous. Success uncertain. So you might be trading one form of captivity for another, or worse. Yes. But choice must be mine to make. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of preparation and grief. Earth's governments unified with unprecedented speed, authorizing the use of an experimental spacecraft originally designed for Mars missions to carry Kira to the rendezvous coordinates. Elena fought successfully for her right to accompany Kira to the launch facility, though not beyond. On their final night before departure, they sat in Elena's apartment surrounded by the mementos of their time together, Kira's first attempts at human art, photographs of their visit to the Grand Canyon, the ceremonial key to New York City presented after Kira had helped decode an ancient mathematical puzzle. I have question, Kira said softly. One I have not asked. Anything. If mission succeeds, if collectors are defeated, would I be welcome to return to Earth? Elena fought back tears. Always. This is your home too, Kira. For as long as you want it to be. Have belonged to two worlds. Difficult to choose. Maybe you don't have to, Elena said, an idea forming. Maybe that's been the lesson all along, that belonging isn't about place but connection. The launch facility buzzed with activity as dawn broke. The sleek spacecraft stood ready on the pad, its design modified based on Kira's suggestions to optimize for the rendezvous. Scientists, officials, and a small group of civilians who had become Kira's friends gathered for the farewell. Dr. Marcus Wilson presented her with a data crystal containing Earth's languages. So you don't forget our words, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Jordan Chen handed her a bound copy of his book chronicling her time on Earth. So others will know your story. When Elena's turn came, words failed her. Instead, she embraced Kira, feeling the subtle difference in body temperature, the strange texture of scales against her skin, once alien, now as familiar as her own reflection. My freedom began with you, Kira whispered, her harmonics creating a melody that seemed to vibrate between them. Whatever comes, that gift remains. The spacecraft's departure was witnessed by billions across the globe. As it diminished to a point of light against the morning sky, Elena stood alongside humans from different nations, cultures, and beliefs, all united in hope and fear for one lavender-skinned girl who had changed their understanding of the universe. 3 days later, deep space telescopes detected a massive energy surge beyond the Moon's orbit, a flare of light that briefly outshone Jupiter. Then, silence. 4 weeks, Earth waited. The military remained on high alert. Scientists monitored every frequency. Elena barely slept, jumping at every communication from the center. On the 32nd day, as Elena sat alone in her office reviewing Kira's language research, a soft chime sounded from the communication array. The message was brief, encoded in the harmonic language that only a handful of humans had learned to decipher. Elena's hands trembled as she translated it. Collectors retreated. Battle won but costly. Recovery needed before journey possible. Will return when able. Keep watching stars. Kira sends harmony to Elena. Elena stepped outside into the night air, looking up at the vast expanse of stars. Somewhere among them, Kira was alive, fighting for her people's freedom as fiercely as she had fought for her own on Earth. We'll be waiting, Elena whispered to the cosmos. However long it takes. In the months and years that followed, humanity continued to evolve. The Interspecies Communication Center expanded into a global institution. Earth's nations established protocols for potential future contacts. Children studied xenobiology alongside Earth sciences. And on clear nights, Elena would still sometimes sit on her rooftop, gazing in the direction Kira had pointed out so long ago, toward a home invisible to the naked eye but forever connected to Earth by the journey of one remarkable being who had taught humanity that freedom and belonging could transcend the stars themselves.